In this video, we're looking at the insanely weird quirks and features of the Nacon Revolution Unlimited Pro. With more than 3 dozen premium and custom controllers under my belt and 2.5 years reviewing controllers on YouTube, I've never seen anything like this. Then I'm going to walk you through the software suite and you can watch me get freakishly frustrated. I'm going to show you how to remap the back paddles because there is no instruction manual with this controller. Then I'm going to give you the very small niche or demographic that this controller is actually good for. Let's get it. So some of the quirks and features of this controller, because there are an absolute ton. First of all, the box is printed with soy ink, which in essence means you can soak the box in water for a couple of days and get yourself some soy sauce. Just kidding, please don't do that. Next up, there is no instruction manual with this controller whatsoever. That is incredibly frustrating considering this controller, more so than any others, is rather complicated because not only do you have different profile modes, but you also have an onboard remapping mode and then a mode that's only for using PC software and only PC. There is no application on the PS5. Plus, you've got weights inside of these hand grips here that can be swapped. And again, without the instruction manual to tell you how to remove these grips and telling you how to actually remap these back buttons on the fly. But hey, if they're saving the environment with a soy box, then maybe the extra paper, the extra bonsai trees that were slayed to get us an instruction manual is just too much for them. Next up, this does have wireless connectivity with the PlayStation 4 and PC. However, you have to use this dongle, which is long and skinny. And unfortunately, you cannot power on your PS4 or PS5 with this controller. Even though it has wireless connectivity, this controller has weights. I've never seen that in any other controller. These look like little dumbbells for mice. They are labeled in 10, 14, or 16 grams. And if you want to increase the weight of your controller for comfort, you can do that. Now, generally, I would like a controller to be as light as possible. That decreases fatigue on the wrists, especially if you got a couple of skinny bad boys like these. There is really no reason to have a heavier controller unless you are cousins with Arnold Schwarzenegger or something and everything feels like paper to you because you're so jacked. Next up, these little metal circles that look like ball bearings for a skateboard. These ain't no ABEX 7s. You're not doing varial tray flips with these or anything. I was excited at first because I thought that these were shaft or stick extensions to where you could not only customize the height of your analog sticks, but then choose what specific cap you wanted, concaved or domed. That is not the case, and these are the stupidest feature I've ever seen in my entire life. The purpose of these is to limit the amount of mobility or maximum movement on the sticks. Now, if you're having difficulty with your accuracy, there's a couple of things you can do, but limiting your range of motion is the last thing you should ever do. Why? Because as a controller player, you are already limited. You have 3/4 of an inch of adjustment for your aim in comparison to mouse players that have 8 to 10 inches with a full-size mouse pad of aiming control. You never want to limit yourself further when it comes to range of motion. That's the whole reason that people get a higher right analog stick, is to give you more leverage. So you have a damn shift knob for an 18-wheeler on there, and it gives you more range of motion to where you can bump up your in-game sensitivity and then make those small finite movements for sniping, but then also quickly turn around and snap aim if somebody's behind you or off to the sides. Makes sense, right? So that's the stupidest feature I have ever seen. With the manufacturing cost of these little aluminum pieces, they could have put that into figuring out how to get a better wireless module to power on your console. I understand they couldn't get the licensing with Sony for that. Next up, the way that you actually remap this controller is incredibly interesting. You do have 4 different onboard profiles, but only if this switch is in the 2 position. If you want to go wired, you have to switch this over to wired and then up to PC. But if you come down here to 1 and then move it over to wireless, now you are in a mode that allows you to rebind or remap the paddles, or back buttons on the fly. So you can just hold down the remapping button and then bind these buttons to the face buttons, dpad, bumpers, etc. And if you're in the 1 setting, which allows you to remap these on the fly, you cannot control 4 different profiles, and you cannot control the different lighting around this RGB ring here. That is only if you click it into 2, and then you must own a PC, which a lot of console players don't. If you want the full functionality of this controller, you do need to install the software suite on the PC and use that. Next little weird quirk. Well, you have a 3.5mm headphone jack. That's nothing different or weird. It does have enough amplification to power damn near any headset. However, it distorts your microphone quite substantially. A recent patch or update did soften the blow of this a little bit, but it makes your microphone quality sound pretty terrible, which is very frustrating. The next weird one, the D-pad, face buttons, everything is a traditional membrane design, i.e. it has a rubber plunger underneath it, except for the bumpers over here, which have actual Omron switches. Now that's really nothing too crazy and out of the ordinary, but the real quirk here is the fact that they don't advertise what these Omron switches are rated for. When you buy a mechanical keyboard or a gaming mouse, it usually tells you, hey, this is rated for 50 million or 100 million clicks, which almost makes me think that they went with some real budget-oriented crapwagon Omron switches, and they just don't want to tell you the rated clicks because they're pretty low. The next interesting quirk and feature is 90% of the time when you press the bumpers on the top here, they simply will not work because they pivot from the top on a swivel mechanism, so the actual switch that you're going to actuate the bumpers with is on the side over here, which I'm not a huge fan of. You're not always just pressing with the ball or meat of your index fingers, so I think that's a funky design for the bumpers. The next one, this doesn't use necessarily a proprietary USB-C cable, but you can't just use any old USB-C cable you got around the house because it does have this little cutout here, so a lot of USB-C cables will be too thick or misshapen to actually fit in that slot. Granted, this is a wireless controller, so you'll only be using the wire to charge unless you are somebody that plays wired constantly. And the next interesting quirk or feature is that you do have an RGB light around the right stick, which will indicate when you are muted in your mic, and also when you switch profiles between the 4 onboard profiles if you use that PC software suite. Not if you're in mode 1 where you can remap on the fly, but you can actually have 4 independent zones. So if you want the top left teal, bottom right purple, you can actually set up 4 different RGB zones on here, which is really cool, and I would consider that an interesting quirk. So this controller is quite quirky. There's a lot of interesting little features. The majority of the ones that I listed are not good. The Nacon Revolution Unlimited Pro is a controller I've wanted to get back on the channel for quite some time. I did review this thing about 2 years ago, however that video is no longer public, the quality was a little bit janky, and I've had a lot more experience reviewing custom and premium controllers. This is marketed towards the PS4, which is at the end of its life cycle. The PS5 has been out for over a year now, and granted, a lot of gamers, a lot of consumers still can't get their hands on that unit. Microsoft has officially announced that they are discontinuing the Xbox One to focus on Xbox Series S and X production. However, Sony is continuing production of the PS4 Slim and Pro, but I do predict in the near future that they will also discontinue their 8th generation home console and strictly focus on manufacturing the 9th generation PlayStation 5. However, that's not a huge deal if you are on a budget or you still want to pick up a PS4, considering they produced 1.16 million units, so you're going to find a ton of them in the wild on Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, eBay. Whether you want the original, Slim, or Pro, there's a ton of them in circulation. And keep in mind, any PS5 can play PS4 games, and more importantly than that, use PS4 controllers and accessories such as headsets. About 90% of the accessories from the PS4 will work on the 5, but only while you're playing PS4 games. If you try and launch a PS5 game, you will get a warning that pops up and says, hey, grab yourself a DualSense controller. So there is a wired version of this controller. However, this is the wired and wireless. It does use Bluetooth 5.0 as PlayStation 4 and 5s use. However, generally Bluetooth is a really slow means of wireless data transfer in comparison to something like a dedicated 2.4 gigahertz connection. For example, what this Razer Viper Ultimate over here uses. However, Sony does some black magic trickery with their wireless connectivity over there, and their Bluetooth is actually pretty quick. I always love to look at the slogans or catchphrases, the little marketing buzzwords that these companies throw on the box, and theirs is reveal their skills. They want you to reveal yourself to them, like Uncle Jesse at a barbecue. All right, moving in. Not Uncle Jesse, but the box here. Maybe a couple of stickers if we're lucky. Go ahead and sticker bomb our cars and our PC towers. Well, I'm not 14 anymore, so I'm not doing that. You have a simplified declaration of conformity. That doesn't sound good at all. You do have some stickers here reminding you to wear a trench coat and then reveal yourself. Well, how am I supposed to know the features and functions of this controller? Well, we have YouTube. Well, that's really nice. So they don't include an instruction brochure or pamphlet for you to actually understand the features and functions, how to pair your controller, if there's an application suite, software program to run with it. But you're just gonna have to figure that out on your own, but they will give you a pamphlet here showing some of their other products to kind of plug some of their other merch. No laser cut foam or anything. You do have a little clear plastic tray in here to hold your case. It does say Nacon on the top. This is a nice soft case over here. You have a little bit of blue on the zipper line. You do have a metal pull tab. It is blue, of course, as this is a licensed Sony product. You do have a wiping cloth, and you do have a wireless dongle as well. In this little case right here, you do have some weights, which is a very unique feature for this controller. Now, the PowerA Fusion Pro 2, which I did just review on this channel, that has weights in it, but in a very deceptive way. It's not a feature or a function or anything. They just bolt a couple of literal fishing weights, like some sinkers in there, to add weight to the controller, so you think, wow, this is a premium controller. It's got some hefty plastics, good solid build quality, maybe a nice printed circuit board in there, but really they're just trying to make their controller heavier because they think that the gamer, the consumer, is going to associate a heavy controller with quality, which a lot of people do, unfortunately. You do have a 10-foot braided USB-C cable and this net in the top here. This is also a design that I would like to see controller companies start to do away from, because if you have this cable in the case, it creates creates a nice little bulge, if you will, and whenever you close it, it's putting a lot of pressure on your analog sticks. Considering all these companies source their thumbsticks from the same company called Atoms, stick drift is dang near inevitable. You know, whether it happens 4 months or 4 years down the road, it really depends on your usage, how you maintain your controller, if you get dust inside of the modules, if you maintain them, clean them, etc. But stick drift is almost inevitable, so I add to the potential problem by having a net up here that presses down. That's one thing I did like about the PowerA Fusion Pro 2, probably one of the only things, is that they had their cable down here, and it was completely free and clear of the thumbsticks, which I really liked. As for the controller itself, aesthetically or cosmetically, I think this is a very good looking controller. It is very similar to the Elite Series 2 in the fact that it is matte black, and then you have a little bit of graphite gray. This front shell is also a soft touch rubberized material, which feels great. And then on the back, you have these rubberized grips over here. Ergonomically, this feels fantastic and is definitely a big step up over the standard PS4 DualShock 4 controller, as those are relatively small for most North American hands. The DualSense controller for the PS5 is very similar to an Xbox One controller in size and ergonomics, but the PS4 controller was a little bit tiny, almost felt like a toy. So this would be a great option just for that feature alone, that it uses a different molded shell, which for my hands, I'm 5'11", have pretty lengthy gangly fingers here. This feels fantastic. Now as for the face buttons, they are still a membrane design, so if you were to disassemble this, you'll see a rubber plunger mechanism under there. They're not a mechanical switch. However, they do feel pretty clicky and good, a little bit mushy on the rebound, but not bad at all, and I also like that they're relatively large as well, so you can cleanly hit these. Same thing with the D-pad, feels a little bit sloppy and mushy, but nothing you're not used to if you've played with a standard Xbox or PlayStation controller. Thumbsticks feel pretty good in their movement as far as resistance, dead zone, and it also does have anti-friction or impact rings in here, which will glide along smooth plastic when you are at full lock, so that is a very welcome feature. The only thing I really don't like right out of the box would be the actual stock thumbsticks. This is extremely slick. Like, you know those oil slicks that baby ducks get rescued from and they're shampooing them on TV in those little infomercials? Those banana peels that you slip out in Mario Kart? That's the surface of this stick here. It's very, very slick. And same thing on the concave stick over here, which is weird because generally a concave stick, considering the pad of your thumb kind of sinks down in there, you can get a good amount of grip. This thing is slick as snot. Now, I will give Nacon the benefit of the doubt and say that the silicone compound, the rubber that they used in here, is perhaps one of the ones that break down over time and get grippier over time from the oils and the heat of your fingers and whatnot. What I am a fan of is the share and options buttons over here. On a standard PS4 controller, they're sunken into the shell, and you almost have to use your nail or your fingertip to hit them. These are bigger and also further out from the shell, so I do like that. Touchpad is okay. It does feel a little bit wobbly, and it also does have a bunch of PlayStation face buttons on it as well. Triggers feel very good. They are cocked at a bit of an aggressive angle in comparison to a standard controller, but they do feel good. You have a nice linear squeeze for racing games and whatnot. I could have swore that this had trigger stops. This controller also does use USB-C for charging, as it does have an internal battery. It's just weird to have only the bumpers tactile and clicky, and then everything else has that mushy stock membrane feel. Same thing with the rear buttons back here. They have a membrane switch. They're a little bit mushy. However, ergonomically, these feel pretty good considering you want to naturally hold the controller like this, and you are able to comfortably and simultaneously cover all 4 of the rear buttons, which is fantastic. The only thing I will say is these are a little bit small, so you really have to get right there in the fine point where it's the ball of your finger here, and they definitely will take a little bit of getting used to, but overall, a pretty good rear button design, and they are remappable. First things first, let's get this bad boy plugged up to the PC and get her updated to the latest firmware. Now, to do that, you need a couple of things. One, the included USB-C cable, which, by the way, I guess I could have listed this as a quirk. This is a 9-footer, not a 10-footer, so I don't know where that extra foot went. I guess I couldn't find it. If this isn't long enough for you for whatever reason, granted this is a wireless controller, I will have a USB extender. It's female on one end, male on the other. It is a 10-footer on Amazon, and that basically adds 10 feet to your USB cable. Little Velcro tie back, very nice. I prefer the rubber ones that have little holes and a little niblet. Of course, you got the Nacon logo emblazed or stamped on there. Kevin, post that and zoom in a little bit so they can see what you're talking about. That's just YouTuber 101. Now, when I first plug this controller in, most likely my Windows PC won't even recognize it, and that's because you got to do a couple of things back here, sweetheart. Okay, it made the chime, which says, hey, I read you, sweetheart. You need to move this up to PC, and you need to switch this over to wired. PC's going crazy back there. It's like, how many switches do you have on the back of your controller? More than you should with this thing, for sure. You've got a remap on the fly mode, you got a PC support mode, you got a wireless mode, you got a wired mode, you got a profile switch, you got a doodad, you got a doohickey, an upper, a downer, a zinger. There's a lot going on back here. Ooh, that little purple glow is hot. Those are Twitch colors, the worst streaming platform on the market. Nice. Sorry if anybody's a Twitch streamer, I'm not ripping on you. Amazon needs to do better with your streaming platforms, all I'm saying. I might be a little bit biased because I'm a Facebook gaming partner, and then I also have had a YouTube channel for 2.5 years, but I've made videos in the past on Twitch's problems. Alrighty, Stallions and Stallionettes, over here at the PC, this is the website that you're going to go to get the drivers, the software suite. This will be linked down there in the description below for ease of use. You're going to scroll all the way down with your mouse wheel, and you're going to see software. Whether you're on Mac or Windows, you're going to click on the download button here. It does come as a zip file. Just put it on your desktop, unzip that sucker. Then you extract this file, then you install that, and bam, now you have the software suite, which looks like this. Now it's showing me in order to use this controller, I need to do a couple of things. I need to switch it over to wire mode, which I've done, but then profile has to be in 2. Not PC. There she is. Now, the very first thing I would recommend you do is come down here to updates and make sure you are on the latest firmware. I am. I'm going to go ahead and shove my dongle in the hole real quick and update that bad girl too. So this is the software suite. One thing I immediately don't like is that you cannot maximize this. So if you have a relatively small monitor and you're old like myself, your old eyes are going to be straining looking at this small window over here. What I do like, it does have a battery indicator up here. Now your updates, that's just that. Then you have PC mode, which shows this little purple LED ring. Up here, you have your PS4 mode, which we're going to adjust right now. So you can edit the onboard profiles. And unless they change this, during my last review about 1.5 years ago, I was not a fan of this application because you had to click in some very weird spots to get it to recognize. Now you can change between the PC version and the PS4 version, and then these 4 subcategories over here. So let's go over here to the thumbsticks. So if you want your sensitivity to ramp up around 50% input or whatnot, you can adjust your curves, which is very, very important, especially for competitive use. Yeah, this isn't doing anything. Yep. Okay, great. Still a crappy application. None of these buttons are doing anything. Awesome. Well, if it worked, this would be a really cool chart over here. Now, this is for your left stick. This is for your right stick. Over here, you have the mapping for all of your buttons. And again, you can change these between 4 different profiles, which you can switch on the fly if you are using that dongle and you have your controller in mode 2. If you're in mode 1, that is for people that do not own a PC and cannot install this software suite and are making all of their adjustments on the fly or directly on the controller. It's such a shitty program. I'm trying to, this is the exact issue I ran into 1.5 years ago, and it's good to see they haven't done any updates to change or better this program. I'm clicking on these. You should get a little pop-up window allowing you to remap the paddles, but you're getting no such thing. And they're not paddles, they're rear buttons, but you get the point. Like, there's just so much dead area. No matter what I'm clicking on, nothing is actually happening. Honestly, as of now, I would say you're better off keeping it in mode 1, where you can just remap on the fly. Granted, you're not going to have 4 switchable profiles. At least you're able to actually remap the rear buttons. Jesus Christ. I'm sure somebody in the comment section below is going to be like, I've had a Nacon Revolution for 1.5 years, and it's super easy to use this program. Well, it's not very intuitive or user-friendly. And you know, it'd be great if they had an instruction manual to actually explain how to use the app if it's going to be this complicated. Over here, you can adjust the minimum and maximum inputs for your trigger, i.e. your dead zone, when it starts to register, as well as your maximum pull. However, of course, nothing I click on is actually changing anything. And then down here, this is just a summary or overview of all the changes you've made in these 4 tabs over here. Now, in order to change the RGB or LED lighting, you're going to come back over here to the main menu, and you are going to go down here to general settings. You would think, okay, I can just click on color and then change. Nope. You got to click over here on one of these 4 different corners, and you are able to change the colors like that. And as you can see, it's changed it on my analog stick. Now, I will say these zones kind of bleed together to where the light doesn't look distinctly like yellow and green. It kind of blends together like a big bowl of soup. Whoa, I actually got something to adjust. That's cool. Pulsing is what is referred to as breathing, where it fades in and out. Cycle is going to be cycling through the RGB spectrum. Gross, but the animation for it isn't really very smooth and fluid, where it just slowly bleeds through. It just kind of goes in a rotation like that. Not the prettiest thing in the world. Prism fades in and out with different colors, so it doesn't slowly fade through. It just turns completely off and then comes back on with another static color. Also, this is another weird little quirk. Add this to the list of quirks. Out of the box, your left rumble motor is at 70% and your right palm's going to be feeling 55%. Why mix match them like that? That would feel weird in your hand. That's what she said, unfortunately. Now, these are the 4 default profiles. You have Nacon Neutral, Nacon First Person Shooter Pro for you esports athletes out there with G Fuel dripping off the mustache. And then you've got Nacon Arcade, probably fighting games and old beat 'em ups and whatnot. And then you can download your profiles as a file to your PC, so you keep those indubitably. And then you can also share them to other Nacon Revolution owners. Have a little community. I like that. Oh, I get what's going on here. These are just labels for what's over here to the right. Okay, so like these are the speeds. Okay, but when I click on them, nothing happens. Come on. Holy moly, dude. This is a terrible, terrible application. In the living room with the Nacon Revolution Unlimited over here, controlling my PlayStation 5, it did just plug and play with that dongle. Now I am in mode number 1, which is the remap on the fly mode, which I'll show you how to remap the rear buttons in just a hot tick over here. But switching over to 2, this is the one that will utilize the changes that we made on the software suite on the PC. Does change the LED ring to red. And then if you are playing with this on PC, obviously you are going to switch that up to PC and it will switch the drivers over to that. Now to remap the paddles, you are going to hold down the profile button for about 3 seconds, and that RGB ring around the right analog stick will begin to pulsate. You're going to hold down the rear button that you want to remap and then tap the face button or D-pad button that you would like remapped. And as you can see, it will show you the corresponding LED flash. You are still in remapping mode, so we're just going to move on to the next button here. And then to exit remapping mode, you are going to hold down that profile button once again for about 3 seconds. And that RGB ring will go solid to let you know that you are now out of mappable mode. I've gotten more stick time with the Nacon Revolution Unlimited over here, and I want to give you guys my pros, cons, and where you can pick this bad boy up. So I'm going to get the pros out of the way because I think there are less of those than there are cons or shortcomings of this particular controller. The first one I like is the weights and the palms. Granted, a lot of people will just like the default weight. I do. It is nice to have that feature and be able to dial them in. Next up, the ergonomics and feel of this controller, and this falls into 3 things. That would be the shape of the shell. I think it is very comfortable in the hand. This rubberized grip in the back here, it's not the best thing in the world. However, it is better than hard plastic on your hands. And then this comes down to personal preference, but I personally prefer the offset sticks as opposed to the symmetrical sticks that PlayStation controllers generally come with. The third benefit would be cosmetically. I think this is a very handsome looking controller, and it'll go good with most people's themes or setups. Now for the cons, the software suite is absolute trash, and that is a huge problem considering you can't optimize the hardware because the software won't really let you change a lot of things unless you sit there for 30 minutes trying to find the sweet spot on the screen to click on. The next thing, the thumbsticks are incredibly slick and they do not include a lot of options. The 2 other swappable sticks are just short concave sticks. I also don't like those restriction stems that you can put on the analog sticks. I see no point in them whatsoever. If you're having difficulty with your aiming, you can adjust that inside of your response curve inside of the software, granted if you can get it to work. I also don't like the fact that the only switches in here that are mechanical are these Omron switches in the bumpers. However, they're not rated anywhere, so you have no idea if they're the cheap crappy Omron switches or the ones that are rated for 100 million clicks. I also do not like the fact that there are no trigger stops on here. That is almost a staple or a standard feature on most premium controllers. That's weird to say, a standard feature on premium controllers. You get what I'm saying. Every other premium and custom controller on the market has some kind of trigger stop or permanently affixed smart switches like a mouse click. Also, the distortion you get when using a microphone through that 3.5mm headphone jack is pretty much unacceptable. The last thing that I really don't like about this controller, which is a huge deal breaker in my opinion, because the most important feature of any premium or custom controller is going to be the rear paddles or buttons, and these really aren't that good. Ergonomically, it is comfortable to hold and you can cover all 4 of the buttons simultaneously. I've got no false actuations out of them, but I had the opposite issue where a lot of times I would go to hit these buttons and I simply did not make contact with the switch, which is unfortunate. Also, these anti-friction rings are on the outside of the analog sticks. It's great that they have this. However, these aren't great in comparison to other anti-friction rings I've tried. At the top there on the left stick, you still get a little bit of grind. Now, before the 3 Nacon fanboys watching this video band together and light a flaming bag of dog crap on my doorstep, double tap my doorbell, about face, and sprint away, let me caveat this by saying that this controller would be good for a few people, and that would be PC-only players. I wouldn't recommend this if you are a Sony console player, considering the PS4 is at the end of its life cycle, and the only games you're going to be able to play with this are PS4 games on PS5. But if you are a PC-only player that enjoys the ergonomics of this controller and also likes a rather hefty controller with those additional weights in the palm grips, this would be a good option for you. Where can you buy this thing? Well, Amazon, of course, because you can buy anything here. You can get used shoelaces and Apple cores here. Now, the recommended retail was originally $180 US. Now it's $170, and that is pretty expensive for all the cons or downsides that this controller offers. At the end of the day, there are much better options in the $170 price point. In fact, there are better controllers in the $100 price point, but I thought I would do my due diligence as a tech reviewer and gaming YouTuber to give this controller another try a 1.5 years later and see if maybe they updated the software suite or added any new features or an instruction manual. or trigger stops, or anything. If you enjoyed this honest controller review, liking it will help it to get seen by more gamers. This information will reach and assist them as well and help them make a decision if this controller is right for their needs. If you want to see some nitty-gritty squeeze-a-titty gameplay, I am a Facebook gaming partner, and I upload gameplay footage of me and the boys over there all the time. I got some serious dry skin on that bottom lip right now. Just don't look at it. Check out the merch store and the link in the description below, as well as my exclusive discount code for aimcontrollers.com. Join the community Discord if you want to chat with myself or the rest of the stallions and stallionettes, and subscribe for more content like this. I cover news in the gaming community and industry, as well as tutorials helping you get set up streaming and YouTubing, and honest gaming peripheral reviews, keyboards, mice, headsets, controllers, mics, chairs, and etc. And I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.